Chapter 15. A Light in the Darkness. Maisie. The soldier grabbed my arm and dragged me into the bushes. Away from Lord Noblet's lamp, it was nearly pitch black. Before Lord Noblet shone his lamp on me, my eyes had grown accustomed to the dark. Now I stumbled, blind on the uneven ground. Apparently, I didn't have the horse's enchantment attached to me. The soldier's grip was strong. He was silent as we crashed into the forest. Why bond with one who was about to die at your hand? I squirmed and tried to wrench free, but the soldier's grip tightened. You're bruising your future queen. There's no need to hold me so tightly. Where could I run to here? He didn't reply, just continued dragging me along. The voices from our entourage receded as we stumbled down a small hill. He wouldn't have to take me much farther. He held me by my left arm. I clutched my left hand with my right, trying to work the ring off. My last act of defiance would be to toss it into the darkness. Curses be upon Lord Noblet and his men. I worked to wrench the ring free without the soldier noticing. I wondered if it would be better, though less defiant, to simply drop the ring as we stumbled on. Less satisfying for me, maybe, but equally effective. He wouldn't know where to begin looking for it. I'm not beautiful, I said defiantly. I was sure he wouldn't risk taking me much farther from camp. But that's no reason to kill me. Cut off my finger if you must. Give it to Lord Noblet. I know he wants it. Collect your reward. But let me go. There's little chance I'll survive, but at least you won't have the curse of my murder on your conscience. He stopped abruptly and spun me around in front of him. I heard rather than saw him unsheath his sword, and the swoosh as he cocked it over his head, preparing to swing it in a death blow. The clouds cleared just enough to let a shaft of the waning blue moon's light through. I saw a glint as he aimed his sword at an angle to take my head off. I hoped the blade was sharp. I prayed the first blow did the trick. Strangely, I almost welcomed the release from the hopelessness of my situation. A shadow moved in front of the moon. The terrifying shape of a pair of darklings fluttered from the forest deep and materialized behind the soldier. Their black ethereal wings spread large behind them like birds of prey, puffing up to look even larger and more intimidating. I realized they had been the shadows tracking us. Maybe I should have been relieved that they weren't the fear Dorka himself. But it was little comfort. They were clearly his foot soldiers and meant me just as much harm. They had a frightening beauty that was nearly impossible to look away from, like temptation itself, every feature perfect and chiseled. No slackness at all. Every muscle sculpted. Their eyes glittered in their handsome faces with a dark light like obsidian, cold and hard. The soldier seemed unaware of them. One of the darklings grinned and gripped the sword hand of the soldier, as if to guide the killing blow himself. If I'd had any hope before, I knew in that instant that I was doomed to death by beheading. My mind searched frantically, desperately through a fog of darkness and despair, for any source of rescue, for anyone to cry out for help to. The image of the light fae rescuing the handsome young man from the feared Dorka and carrying him off flashed into my mind. I grasped at a tiny thread of hope. Better to take my chances with them than meet certain death here. I wasn't convinced they could hear me. I had no reason to think they would come to my rescue, even if they could. I cried out to them anyway, "Help! Help me, Light Fae. Save my life and get me out of this cursed forest." But why should they help me? Me, an apparently selfish girl who only wanted to live. I had to give them a reason. Make me beautiful, truly beautiful enough to save my sister and my people. It was almost an afterthought, but it was a reason I should live. The desperate plea came out of my mouth unbidden, as much a surprise to me as to the darklings behind the soldier. "They can't see you," one of them hissed, almost amused. The other growled. "Now. Hold still and this will be quick." The soldier's lips moved, but the voice that came from him as he began his swing was vaporous and evil. It floated from him in a curl of mist. My hands shook wildly. With a final burst of adrenaline, I managed to tug the king's ring off my gloved finger. As I cocked my hand to throw the ring into the dark oblivion of the forest, a flash of white light temporarily blinded me. The soldier crumpled to the ground in front of me, his head neatly separated from his body by his own sword. It rolled to a stop at my feet like a hideous gift. I choked back nausea. 2 male fae clothed in light stood beside his body where it fell. They were fierce and beautiful, in their own way entirely as frightening as the darklings. They threw light behind them, apparently stunning and blinding the darklings. The light fae folded their wings behind them and stepped around the dead soldier's body to peer at me curiously. "This is her," one said to the other, disbelieving. The other shrugged. "We can't linger. The darklings will recover and gain consciousness soon enough." He turned to me. "You called, and our king was obliged to answer. He owes you a great debt, that of a life and anything required to keep it." He made a move toward me. "Beauty is his and his alone to grant. But only if he decides you need it." I shrank back, clutching the ring. I had no desire to meet the fairy king. Get me out of the forest safely. That's all I ask. I was confused, but I wasn't greedy. The sound of shouting and men crashing through bushes from the direction I'd come startled me. They must have seen the light. "We have to hurry." I didn't trust the fairies before me, but waiting for the darklings to wake and Lord Noblet's men meant certain death. The fairies exchanged looks. Each took one of my elbows. They propelled me forward, away from the dead soldier. There was a whoosh and the flutter of wings. Suddenly we were in the air, mere feet above the ground, dodging trees, but safe from underbrush that grabbed and snapped at our feet and ankles. Behind us, the yelling grew louder. An arrow buzzed past my ear and embedded into a tree next to me. The fae remained calm and kept flying, heading intently toward a spot in the darkness ahead with increasing speed. A large tree loomed before us. The fae didn't seem to be slowing. I closed my eyes, bracing for impact with it. The collision never came. We flew through the tree as if it weren't there, or as if it had opened for us, a secret door into another world. 1 minute we were in the Doove. The next flap of a wing, there was a clap like the sound of a door slamming shut. The shouts behind us disappeared. The air smelled sweet, like fresh pine and fir muted with fallen dew. Like fresh springs and running water. Cold, clean air. I opened my eyes. The forest around us had changed. The heavy sense of evil lifted. The waning blue moon's light lit the forest with shafts of silver. The shadows were no longer sinister and watching. The underbrush was less dense and threatening. The body of the soldier, his severed head, the darklings, and the sounds of Lord Noblet's approaching men were gone. There was only the curious call of a night owl. The fae set me down on a patch of soft moss. A horse whinnied in the near distance. "Calibre is eager to get home," one fae said to the other. "You're not going to fly me to wherever you're taking me." I still clutched the king's ring. I hadn't had time to throw it into the forest. But this was better. Much better. Lord Noblet would never find it here. Would never be allowed entrance into the Seelie Court's territory. The 2 fae regarded me curiously. "You expect us to carry you to the palace? When we have perfectly good horses to do the job?" So much for my dreams of flying high in the sky on the arms of handsome fairies. One of them noticed my tight fist. With a movement so quick it startled me, he grabbed my wrist. Against his bruising grip, I felt my rapid pulse beat against my skin. His thumb stroked my wrist. My fingers curled open against my will. He gazed into my open palm, where the king's ring sparkled in the moonlight. "It's lucky you took that ring off when you did, or we might not have found you in time." The other came over to look and plucked the ring from my hand. He examined it, holding it between 2 fingers up to the moon and starlight. "Hey, that's mine." I flailed for it with my free hand. The fae ducked out of reach. "We'll keep it safe for you, Selectress. But I'm not sure you'll want it back." It's enchanted with a suicide spell. What? How's your mood? Are you feeling any happier now? The taller one chuckled. I'd be feeling a whole lot happier if I trusted the two of you, and you'd let go of my wrist. The one Fae dropped the ring into his pocket. I'll give this to the king for safekeeping. The other one released my wrist. Such a complainer. I rubbed my wrist, fighting down fear. Out of one danger and into another? Anger was my best defense. Am I your prisoner now? Like the young man you, or one of your kind, abducted in the Doove a few days ago. So many questions, one said, not bothering to deny my allegation. So little gratitude, the other said. Didn't we just risk our lives to save her? I thought we did. I'm sure we did, the other said. He grabbed my arm. This way, Selectress. It's a long ride to the palace. If we want to reach it before sunrise, we'd better get riding. You'll want time to make yourself presentable for your inevitable audience with the king. His gaze ran down me, as if he weren't optimistic about my presentability ever rising above imperfect. Audience with the king? My heart fluttered with terror at the thought. The Fae warrior pulled me roughly toward the sound of the whinnying horse. I stumbled along, trying to keep up with his long strides. As we came over a small rise, a clearing came into view ahead. 3 magnificent white horses, almost glowing in the moonlight, were tied to low-hanging branches of a magnificent fir. The smallest horse raised its head, extending its neck long and its head back, and let out a neigh of recognition and welcome as it spotted us. Then it spread out its wings and shook its white mane. The other 2 horses followed its lead, then pawed the soft dirt beneath the tree. The Fae dragging me along smiled. Seems like you'll be getting your wish to fly to the palace, Selectress. He laughed softly. I may have been an adequate equestrian, but I'd never had a chance to find out. We were too poor to own a horse. None of the horses were saddled. I glanced at the Fae. I'm supposed to ride bareback? Calibre doesn't like the bit, the one said, nodding to the small horse. Don't be afraid. She's gentle. Lean low and hang on with your thighs. You'll be fine. With that sage advice dispensed, he lifted me like I was no more than a leaf in the wind and settled me on the mare's back. The Fae mounted their own horses. With a cluck of their tongues, they commanded the horses onward. Calibre took off. I lurched forward and grabbed hold of her mane like the scared amateur rider I was. She took off at a gallop and spread her wings. Within a few paces, we were airborne. Her wings beat the air in a soothing rhythm. The earth fell away and the stars seemed brighter. We flew toward the west, away from where the sun would rise. I could only tell by the position of the North Star. I was too afraid to look down, but looking up was wondrous. When I finally got my bearings, and was comfortable enough in my seat that I felt I wouldn't immediately slide off, I worked up the nerve to peer downward over the side of the horse. The ground below looked both familiar and changed. Villages and towns I expected to see were missing. And then we crossed into unfamiliar territory. The exhilaration of flying overwhelmed my fatigue and fear. Whatever I faced in the Seelie Court, I'd need my wits. For now, the cold air cleared my head. Rational thought returned. The Fae's words came back. Why did the Fairy King owe me a life? What had I done to deserve such a reward? I sucked in a deep cold breath, feeling warm despite the chill. The king's ring is a suicide ring. The thought echoed around my mind. I suppressed a shudder. If I hadn't been so preoccupied with the future and my fate in the Seelie Court, I might have felt luckier at my near escape. Just how much had the ring affected my mood in the Doove? There was no arguing that I'd been going meekly to my death without much thought to escape. If the Light Fae hadn't found me when they did. I shook off the thought. Was the spell merely a dark mood enhancer? Or could it draw desperation and despair out of thin air? Just how powerful was the dark magic? Whatever the case, the suicide enchantment certainly helped explain my predecessor's strange deaths. But who had enchanted the ring? And on whose request? I hunkered into Calibre's warmth, letting the soothing beating of her wings comfort me. I wished I could ride in the sky forever, but soon I would have to face the Fairy King. And he held all the power,